Hey everybody, this is Brian Entin. Thank you for joining us today. We are in Idaho. If you've been following along with us with this just awful story, the homicide involving four University of Idaho students in Moscow. I hate to say the case has gone cold. Hopefully it hasn't, but there haven't been a lot of new developments over the last 2 weeks or so. There's still no killer in custody, and really this entire community is really just on edge. I mean, that's not even an exaggeration. Like, it's just people are really, really nervous here, not knowing, you know, the status of the investigation, if they're going to catch this guy, and or if it's more than one person, and it's got people really, really upset here. We're in the car with photographer Mo here. Our producers in front of us. We're going to interview the prosecutor today, which should be really, really interesting. A lot of you have submitted questions for me, so we're hoping to get a few new nuggets. They've been pretty tight-lipped, but hopefully we'll get a little new information. Jennifer Koffendorfer joins me right now. Hey, Jennifer.
Hi.
Former FBI agent. I've been following this case since the beginning. Is with us a lot on a lot of these awful cases. So Jennifer, yeah, I've been here now, for the last day. It's just, I think people here, I was just saying, are really, they really are nervous. I mean, the kids at the school don't go out at night. They walk in pairs. People have pepper spray. There's just this feeling here of unease, which I'm sure you can understand.
Yes, Brian, even though the police have been adamant that this is targeted as opposed to a random serial killing, there's still somebody walking around that was capable of killing four people with a knife.
Yeah, right. And I think that's got people nervous. One thing that struck me, because I just got here yesterday and I just saw the scene for the first time, is it's really dense. There's a lot around there. It's not like this house is, in the middle of a field and nothing's around. There's a big apartment building right next door. There's a big parking lot behind the house for that apartment building, and there's other homes surrounding it. So you have to think that someone must have seen something. I mean, granted, it was the middle of the night, but there were a lot of people around, it seemed like.
Yeah, people are coming forward, but really they're coming forward with nothing so far in terms of neighbors and people saying they just didn't see anything. And Ring cameras apparently were installed after this incident, not before. So, it's a small, sleepy community, and people were likely asleep at 3, 4, 5 in the morning.
Let me get to some questions from people on Twitter. From Matt on Twitter, were fingerprints taken at the scene? If so, were any fingerprints found that cannot be identified to anyone in the home? I would assume, I mean, we saw them in the beginning, that clearly they took a lot of fingerprints, I would think.
Right. This scene is going to be analyzed inside and out from an evidence response team that knows how to lift fingerprints and is going to be taking blood and hair and fibers, samples of any and everything, glasses. I can't even imagine the, hundreds of submissions that are going to be given to the lab to look at. So to the Twitter question, although we haven't seen them, yes, I think it is a definite answer is yes.
Yeah, and one other thing that I found being out there talking to the neighbors is they said this was definitely a party house. That house was known for parties, and there was another house in the area known for parties, and they said pretty much every weekend, both nights, a lot of the time, there were just a ton of people coming and going from the house. So when you think about fingerprints, when you think about DNA, I mean, there's probably a lot of it in there.
It's going to make it so complicated, and that's why this is taking so long. Even once they try to see if they even have usable fingerprints, because there's very specific points that need to be, found within the print that is lifted to be able to do a comparison. Same with DNA. There has to be a profile for the lab to come up with, and it's going to be hard based on exactly what you said. And once you get that, you have to find the people to compare it to. So you're going to be getting anybody and everybody that was at their house that they're going to need to get their DNA and their prints.
Okay, another question from Twitter. This is from Ron. Aren't the most logical perps the two surviving roommates? I'll just say the police have ruled them out clearly. They've said it outright that they are not suspects right now. It sounds like they may be the ones who called 911. What do you think, Jennifer?
Well, they have been ruled out per police. We know that one of the roommate's cell phones was used, but police made it pretty clear that it wasn't the roommate that called. It was someone else in the house. That's why we know there's other people that were in that house in the morning, and I would suspect after everyone arrived.
Yeah, makes sense. Amy from YouTube asks, have the roommates spoken out at all? So they haven't spoken to the media. It's been hard getting a lot of people to talk, honestly. I think the sororities and fraternities have people on lockdown and told them not to talk to the media. Went to the bar yesterday where some of the victims were. They said that police told them not to talk to anyone but investigators. So the roommates haven't spoken to the media, but I would assume, especially since police say they've ruled them out as suspects, it seems like, Jennifer, they are cooperating with the police.
Yes, I would think they're cooperating, and it's such an FBI footprint because that's what we ask of witnesses. Please do not discuss the case with anyone. So I'm not surprised that it's kind of a gag order that's been put in place.
Do you, let's see, we got another, I want to get the questions in from the viewers. Kathy asks, is there evidence that a taser could have been used to incapacitate the victims? We haven't heard about anything like that from police. We have heard that it's possible, sorry, it's really sunny, that some of the victims were asleep. I mean, what do you think about this taser question?
I don't think that this is going to be a reality at all. Good question. But I think people just struggle with how can all these victims be victimized without a fight, without a struggle, without waking, without screaming. And it's just to understand it, they were ambushed in their sleep. And by the time that they are getting attacked, it's happening so fast. Just imagine, to the larynx, to the heart, to the vital organs, to the lungs. It happens quickly, Brian. And I think that's why there wasn't more of a struggle other than some defensive wounds, which are, usually wounds on the arms and the hands, just like this.
Yeah, it's so weird to think about how it must have gone down. I was like on the phone with Ashley Banfield last night for almost 3 hours, just like going over all these different theories. Um, you know, were the doors locked? Did the killer lock the doors after he left? I mean, we were talking about it. It wouldn't be that unusual. I was thinking back to college. I had a bunch of roommates. I mean, I didn't live in like a full-on party house, but we had parties. It's not that unusual to like have a lock on your door if you have like 5 or 6 roommates, a lot of people coming and going. So, were the doors locked when the killer came in? And then also like to stab, and you can talk more to this, but like to stab 4 people to death. I mean, it almost, I mean, like you would have to kind of know, right? Like where to stab them, how to do it. I mean, like, it just seems like it would be so difficult. I mean, obviously you had a gun, you could just go in and shoot them, but it doesn't seem like an easy thing to do.
Well, Brian, it takes a lot of force. I mean, just to have the strength to penetrate, not trying to get too graphic. But I think based on what police have said, this being sloppy and not being an organized crime scene, I think it was more of a frenzy, more of a hateful, frenzied attack. And that also is very, unfortunately, can result in these same results as somebody that would know exactly where to strike.
Okay, just kind of a warning. We're kind of in the country a little bit here, so hopefully you won't lose me. But if you do, that's what happened. William on Twitter just tweeted me, could the roommates have had other people with them during the night? We don't really know, but it seems like it's definitely a possibility.
Yes, I think this is really a possibility after listening to the state police comments. It seems like there might have been a bit of an after party or other people in that house. And that might explain, too, the call for the unconscious person. I mean, what if, Brian, there was an unconscious person that had been there from the night before that was passed out and the roommate called about that and then all this was uncovered? We don't know, but
yeah, maybe the call wasn't even about one of the initial call wasn't even about one of the victims. I mean, that's
yes,
a possibility.
here they're in a house and there's privacy. right? You know, that's probably the threshold that your roommate didn't enter. It's kind of a party house. Everybody can go everywhere, but the bedrooms might have been more private.
Yeah. Okay, Michelle asks, have they confirmed there is only one murder weapon? Um, I don't think they've actually said, I mean, they said that it was a knife. They didn't give specifics on the knife, though, which is something I kind of want to try to drill down on today. Um, I mean, could it be more than one, do you think?
Well, Brian,
They said it's one.
early on, the coroner made a statement, you know, in her first press conference, and she said it was a knife. And then they asked if it was the same knife used on the victims, and she just spontaneously says yes. And then she sort of backtracks a little and says, well, I guess it could be multiple knives that were the same kind, which is this fixed blade knife. When I first heard that, Brian, I was very convinced that it's one killer because of that. You know, multiple killers wouldn't have the exact same knife, likely.
And again, I don't want to get gruesome, and I always try to think of the victims' families. So, you know, I don't want to go too far, but would it take a special kind of knife to do this? I don't know much about knives. I mean, like, could a kitchen knife kill 4 people, or would you have to have some kind of special military style, something hunting style?
Oh, well, any knife can kill, definitely. But they were very specific that this was a fixed blade knife. And I think they're judging from the dimensions of the wounds and, you know, the ability to cause the kind of bloody scene that developed that we can see just from pictures of outside the house.
Isn't a fixed blade knife, though, kind of like any knife that's not like one that where it pops out? Is that what that means, basically?
Well, when I think of a fixed blade knife, as an example, it's not a switchblade. It's
Right.
not a, you know, a pocket knife. It's not, it's something that is, and it's not something that would be wobbly, you know, like a steak knife, how it fits in the handle, but they're a little wobbly. And the description was really, I mean, I've heard Rambo knife, but basically like a hunter's knife that's
Oh,
fixed.
okay. Alice from Facebook asks, and this is a popular one I've heard a lot. If there was a dog in the house and if someone let the dog out before the attacks, we know there was a dog in the house. And you know, it doesn't sound like the dog wasn't hurt. It looked like it was a doodle. So a lot of people are wondering, why didn't the dog bark? I mean, you know, some dogs don't bark. Maybe the dog did bark. We don't really, I mean, but the dog does seem to keep coming up, Jennifer, with people. Very curious.
And it's
It
oh,
was
sorry, Brian.
Kaylee's dog.
But yeah, it's a great question, you know, and I think you just provided two possibilities, that it barked, but nobody heeded the bark. But I also think, Brian, it's very likely that this individual, this wasn't their first time in this house, and maybe the dog had some familiarity. That's just another possibility that has to be, you know, looked into.
Okay. Yeah, I want to. I've got a million questions for you always, Jennifer, but I want to kind of wrap it up here just because I don't want to lose signal. But hopefully, we'll have more information today. Again, we've got some key interviews today where you know, we hope to get a few new nuggets. Hopefully, you know, I was really hoping this week maybe we'd have some kind of resolution to this for the victims' families because, you know, Kaylee's sister was on Cuomo last night, and it's just heartbreaking what they're going through. So we'll keep you updated throughout the day, of course, on News Nation later. Thank you, as always, Jennifer, for making the time for us. And we'll see everybody later. Have a good day,
Thank you.
everybody.